I think a lot of us can get stuck doing really good things that, help the community, that serve a purpose, that fulfill purpose within us, keep us busy. I know as ladies, we keep really busy. It's easy for us to get busy. But is it really what God is wanting you to do in that season? Or is that season over and you need to, step into the next chapter?
You're listening to the Big Ideas Podcast with Ashlee Meg. Tune in for honest conversations as we pursue bold dreams, redefine what is possible, and empower the next generation to live big. You'll hear stories that prove over and over again that just because something wasn't a part of our plan doesn't mean it won't be used for our good. Whether you're already an entrepreneur, you dream of becoming one, or you're raising the next generation of entrepreneurs, this podcast is for you. There's no time to waste on your big ideas. So let's get started. Here's your host, Ashlee Meg.
Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Big Ideas Podcast. We are so excited that you're joining with us today. Again, and if you've been following along with this season of episodes, or if you're new to this season, just as context, this season is all about just trusting God with some of our craziest plot twists and just finding ourselves in these situations or seasons where we're like, oh my gosh, I thought this is what my perfect plan was going to be, but look what God is doing now. I can't even imagine what he's doing. Or maybe you're like smack in the middle of something and you're like, okay, but like, what is he doing? So you haven't maybe even crossed over to having that perspective of looking back and being like, wow, this is better than I can imagine. So whether you find yourself in a situation where like, tell me it's going to be okay. Just tell me it's all going to work out. That's what we're here for. And if you're also carrying your own amazing story of God's goodness, let's just celebrate that together as well today too. So without further ado, today's guest is one of my dearest friends. Her name is Meg Enge. Welcome to the show, Meg.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here and just being a part of this season's episodes. I'm just so thrilled to be a part of it. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Yes. So Meg is a mom, she's a wife, and she is the owner of Meg Enge & Co., which she's going to get all into that story. It's amazing how it came about and what she was doing before that. And just an amazing perspective of what God can do with some bold obedience. And so, let's just kind of jump right into it. Meg, why don't you share with us, what you were doing before God called you to start your own company and what that looked like. And really walk us through that whole season of like, oh my gosh, he's calling me to put this down and pick something completely new up. Am I capable? All the questioning. Just walk us through that story because it's so inspiring. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, wow, what a journey. And to dig back into everything that God has done, it seems honestly so overwhelming, but there's so much goodness in the journey. And I'm happy to share it today with everyone. And honestly, my life has always been all things hospitality. And so I was in the world of, the hotel industry for a really long time. And then COVID hit. We all know about COVID and its struggles and challenges. But that actually propelled me forward to start working for a ministry. And it was the local church that we had launched in attachment to a ministry that goes out and preaches the gospel all around the world. And so my husband actually works for that portion of the ministry. And then we were launching a local church. And I had the opportunity, which seemed like opportunity of a lifetime, to be completely honest, to be the director of hospitality in that transition from going from the hotel with COVID happening and everything shutting down to stepping into an amazing opportunity to be the director of hospitality for a local church. And, for most people, it's like, oh my goodness, like I've made it. I get to work with my husband. I get to impact the community. I get to, do all of these things that are so amazing, the local church. And as amazing as it was, I knew that that was was not my landing place. I always knew that it was like the bridge that was going to cross me over into something else. What that something else was, I wasn't 100% sure about, but then the Lord started bringing people into my world, and I would get these amazing prophetic words, and I would have these amazing encounters with the Lord, and he started showing me what he had in store for me and my family and our future. And it's so easy to get excited about those prophetic words and all that the Lord is doing and all that he really has for us, but knowing that there is his perfect timing for his will to come to pass in your life. And so as I was continuing on in my role in the church, to be honest, like I was loving it. And I was surrounded by amazing people. I loved the mission. I got to do a lot of things that really gave me purpose within my calling of being a creative and doing events. And I started to learn like how much I really love to set an atmosphere and create events and, do all of those things for individuals. And in that time, I started receiving such amazing feedback from individuals where they would say like, man, when we walk into this church, like it's like nothing we've ever experienced. The hospitality is like at an all-time high. And even in the bathroom, you've provided things that like we wouldn't even expect to be there, but because of the convenience, it's made us feel so welcomed and so honored and seen and loved. And so in that, I started recognizing like, wow, like I truly have a gift that the Lord has placed within me. Because for me, those things are kind of like natural. I'm like, we have to have all the things.
Yeah.
And everybody's just like blown away by it. And it's like, oh, okay. And so in my journey at the church and that being a bridge to where God was bringing me, I was starting to really see that the things that I thought were normal were really being highlighted as gifts and that were things that honestly this world needed. And so I've loved that process of going from the hospitality world of the hotel and going into working for the church. And like I said, even though I felt like this was a dream job and it really was for, a certain season, I knew it wasn't my landing place. And so as the Lord started bringing people to give prophetic words and just that unction of like, there's more, girl. So don't get too comfortable.
Yeah.
Because I really was starting to get comfortable. I was like, everybody's so nice. I love everybody. This is great. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. It would have been really, really easy for me to continue doing that, honestly, for the rest of my life. And I think a lot of us can get stuck doing really good things that, help the community, that serve a purpose, that fulfill purpose within us, keep us busy. I know as ladies, we keep really busy. It's easy for us to get busy, but is it really what God is wanting you to do in that season? Or is that season over and you need to, step into the next chapter? And so for me, the Lord was like, okay, chapter 2, let's go, girl.
Yeah.
probably further along than chapter 2. But honestly, jumping into chapter 2, the next step, it's really been like such a huge leap of faith. Because like I said previously, oh my goodness, these words that I was receiving, like they're amazing what God has in store. But when you take a step back and you really start thinking about, okay, I'm going to change this from, talking about it, now being about it. And that little pivot.
That's a big Grand Canyon sized leap, really. I mean,
yeah,
it's all the mental shifts. Yes.
All the mental shifts. And thankfully I have a husband that was fully supportive of me, and he sees the gifts within me. He understands the calling on my life, and he's not afraid of me to step into it. And so all of that to say, the Lord not only spoke to myself, but spoke to him so we could be in alignment. And when we made this huge leap of faith. We didn't allow the enemy to have a foothold in any, any area where there could have been like division, where he's like, oh, I told you not to do that, or things like that. And so I'm beyond grateful that, within our marriage, we decided to make this leap together, because even though it's Meg Enge and Co., it's really Enge and Co., because it's the whole family.
Yeah, I understand that 100%. Yeah, it's so true. And it is such a, I mean, I'm like you. We have a great experience with family business, and whether Andy's taking the lead in something or I'm taking the lead in something, when you have each other as, your key support people, I mean, that is, all the difference. Because you hear the stories of, marriages or family units, just kind of struggling or collapsing even under the stress, because it's a daily decision. It's daily putting things down to pick new things up, and all the grace, all the learning curves. Yeah. So
So honestly, when we finally made that decision, I had amazing women of God. I really had two pillar, God-fearing women that were just interceding on our behalf and coming alongside me, because again, like, it's great to have your husband's support. And honestly, I'm like, I need my husband's support. I'm like, if I have your stamp of approval, like, I can overcome everything and anything. But sometimes in my head, he's such a good cheerleader that I'm like, you're just saying that because you're my husband. Or, you're just saying that, because you're my mom, or whatever, the relationship is in the listeners' lives that are, overcoming these different things in their lives. But honestly, these two women of God that came alongside me and really like just intercede on my behalf, praying for me, declaring over, everything God had already spoke, and really just like, challenging me, like, Meg, you're either going to believe in this or you're not. And it came down to like me getting over myself, and as hard as that kind of sounds, or even maybe as silly as it sounds, it's really, even what you said, Ashlee, like, it's a mindset that we have to either choose to take on or, not, and not step into all that God has called us into. And so really having the community of women, my husband, it really helped me to believe in what I was stepping into. And in my transition, making sure that I left, one position the right way with integrity, and them blessing me in my going, so that way I could really step into the fullness of this season that I'm, in as an entrepreneur. And so in all of that, wow, like, I don't look back. I'm beyond grateful that not only, that I hear from the Lord, but that my husband hears from the Lord, and that he sent backup to confirm, like, we're on the right track, because we can, a lot can go on in between our ears, and it can sometimes get the best of all of us,
Yeah. So I love all of that. So I want you to keep going. So there's the part of the story that is my favorite, where you were like, okay, I'm doing this. I've told people I'm doing this. I'm launching my own business. Summer break's over. Kids are going back to school. Now's the time. Tell us about that first day, that first week. Tell us how that, like, okay, you did the Grand Canyon leap, like we just said, and here we are. So tell us about that. It's my favorite.
Yes. So this is honestly such a great part of my story, and honestly, it wasn't in the plans. Imagine that, like, we think we have all the plans.
Yeah.
But truly, God already knew this was in store for me and that I needed it. And so when I came back from, vacation summer, and having that time with the kids, and then it was like, I got home and kids are out of the house. My husband's, going to work. And before he leaves to go to work, he's just like, okay, babe, so what do you got on the agenda? What are you doing today? And I was just like, I'm asking the same question, like,
to be determined.
And it was so quiet in my house, and I'm like a doer, so I'm just like always constantly in the mix doing different things. And so when I realized like, okay, we really took this leap, and like I don't have any tasks that I need to do for somebody else. Like I can fully focus on what this is that, I'm stepping into. When that realization hit me, I was like, oh my goodness, I need to go to the Lord because I have no clue what I'm supposed to be doing, and of course, I say that lightly, I had this to-do list, but half the stuff on the to-do list I didn't know how to do.
Yeah.
And the other stuff is just like so overwhelming because as doers, a lot of times we want to be able to just quick check something off. And I knew they were things that were just going to take time. And so I had this whole to-do list, but I really didn't know how to attack it. And so I said, you know what? I'm just going to go and I'm going to just be with the Lord. Well, what I thought was supposed to be like, maybe 20 minutes, an hour, with the Lord and soaking and pressing into Him. Well, let's just say I didn't have a necessary timeline other than shorter than longer. That led to 2 weeks of me just meeting the Lord in my living room when everybody shifted out of the house and me just going before Him. And honestly, guys, I really didn't even know what to say to the Lord. But it was Him really coming and just like refining me in everything because I had come out of a season where, working for the church, even though it's like such an amazing honor to work for a church, there's so much going on and you're pouring so much out. And it was just like, go, go, go all the time. And I was wound up like a yo-yo. I mean, this thing was so tight. I knew I was like wound up, but not to the degree that I was. And so what the Lord started doing within that 2-week process, He was really just unwinding me and helping me to process everything that I just came out of and what He needed me to now step into. And then that way, everything was like a clean slate. And I didn't have all this like ping pong back and forth, thoughts going through my mind. And I just cried. I mean, I ugly cried like Niagara Falls was coming down my face. We had a solid 2 weeks of no makeup because I would have looked like Warrior Princess. Kids would have come home like,
What is happening? Yeah.
But it was like the most beautiful, intentional, authentic time between the Lord and I that I didn't even plan for, but the Lord knew I needed it. And I think a lot of times we have to pause and make that time for the Lord because He knows what we need and He knows how our day needs to run. He knows what is in store for us, even the plot twists, even the, things that we can't plan for, He knows all of those things. And so when we give, our first to Him, He's able to set us up for that success. And so that's really what He was doing. And He was helping me to reprioritize what the start of my day looked like and, what it looks like to put Him first and to have that time. Because, like I said, as a doer, you think, oh my gosh, I have all this stuff I need to do. I don't have time to sit here and cry for 2 hours or 2 weeks. But really, when we say, okay, Lord, I'm going to sacrifice this, time, and give it to you, it's really like, okay, I'm trusting you, Lord, with my schedule, with my time, with all of the things, because He can go and He can accelerate those things in ways that like we can't even imagine. And so that was a huge turning point for me because, like I said, then when that 2 weeks kind of came to a conclusion, it wasn't even like the Lord spoke to me, let's just do this for 2 weeks. It was like day by day, okay, Lord. And then I just kept finding myself in a posture of just like, okay, Lord, here I am. And to be honest, in my head was still running so fast. And as a mom, as a wife, like it's really easy just to get caught up with the mom to do list, let alone like the entrepreneur to do list, the wife, the friend. Oh my goodness, like to be a good friend.
Yes.
It's like overwhelming. But to be honest, like it took a while to just calm my mind down and to really just give give it over to him, because honestly, as I was sitting there, I kept thinking, okay, got to get up and do this. But my body was paralyzed, like in this just posture of worship to the Lord, that I couldn't move even though my head wanted to, if that makes sense. And it was needed. It was so needed. And I'm beyond grateful for that to be my transition from going from all of the, church work and ministry work to stepping into what God had called me into, which was Meg Enge and Co., doing events and weddings and corporate events and social events and you name it, and just like elevating those experiences and those milestones that people are celebrating. And I was just, like I said, beyond grateful that I had that time to just rest in him and understand that, like, we're starting with a clean slate and we're going to rework our routines and put the Lord first, and then see everything else just fall into place.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And, I can just hear all of the achievers, or maybe the overachievers, if we're calling ourselves that, because I'm definitely in that category. So I'm calling out myself, but I can just hear this corporate exhale right now for everybody listening who's like, so you're saying I can put my to-do list down for a minute,
It'll
what am
still
I?
be there.
Yeah, it's still going to be there. The check boxes, they're going to get checked eventually. Yeah. And maybe they don't all have to get checked, and it's like this beautiful reminder. I think that's one of my favorite things about that story, is it's just this beautiful reminder of just surrendering our day, surrendering our time. I get so uptight so easily, like you said, the yo-yo, about my time, and I'm like, I want every minute to count. I want every 30-minute block to count. And as moms and business owners, you don't have them to waste. Like, we understand that urgency, but at the same time, like, we are not greater than it. And so we are stewards of it. And so one of my constant prayers is like, God, give me margin and multiply my time, because you are the God of multiplication, right? I can show up and do things in this basic, realm of time, however you want to say it. I'm not going to get scientific because I don't understand all of that, but he supersedes all of that, right? And so it's like, one of my favorite verses that I have on the board above my desk where I read my Bible every morning, is I put my plans before you every morning. Here I am at it again. I put my plans back on your altar. Tell me what to do today. Even if I thought you told me yesterday that this should get done, like, I'm still going to ask you again, because, you've talked about you were in the center of God's will. You knew you're in the center of God's will. And that's just like such a great, safe place to be. And it's like, I don't want to think something's urgent if it's not, and I don't want to think something can wait if it's urgent. Like, I don't want to doubt and self-doubt and procrastinate and overthink or delay, I mean, we were talking the other day, and I was like, even something as simple as when I feel like God gives me a message for like a social media post, and I'm like, oh man, that's good. I should write that down so I can share that, because that's, thank you, Lord. That's beautiful. That helps me. That might help somebody else.
Yeah.
And so I'll put together a post, and then I save it in my drafts, on Instagram. And then a month later, I'll come back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never shared that. Why didn't I share that? Because I overthought it. I doubted it. I wondered who would like it, who's really, all the thoughts. Well, that's just dumb. That's been said before. That's been said better by somebody else. It's all the same lies and filler and just junk that just can steal our enthusiasm, steal our creativity. And I'm rambling, but I just love that story of just surrendering it and trusting that God's going to do something greater with it, and that 2 weeks, I'm sure you feel like you've gotten that time, so to speak, back. Not that you lost it. It was such a gain, but
100%. And even as you speak about, just like the urgency and like, am I going ahead of God? Am I behind the 8 ball? Am I like in his will on time? Even in that transition, like I said, it's really easy to get comfortable where you're at when people around you love you, you love them. The job is paying the real life bills that are coming in.
Right.
All of those things. And so when I was like going back and forth in my head, like what you're saying, with real life concerns, the Lord, my last prophetic word that I received was that I was in borrowed time. And so
Mm.
the Lord is so gracious in his nudging, but there gets to a point where, like, yeah, you're in borrowed time, or like, hey girl, I'm going to need you to jump and let's do this, because you never want that window to close. You never want to, get to the end of your life and be like, yeah, I mean, I heard the word and I wanted to do it. It sounded like really great option, but I just, didn't have the courage and I didn't have the faith to just put your Nikes on and just do it. You know what I mean? And so honestly, for me, when I received that word, I was like, oh, okay, we're done talking about it. And now the Lord is really, asking me, like, are we going to do this together, or, are you going to get left behind? And I'm like, oh, I don't want to get left behind. I want to fulfill everything that God has for not only myself, but for my family and for everyone that's going to be within my influence. I want to make sure that I am walking out everything that the Lord has assigned to me in this lifetime. And, this lifetime is really short, when you think about
Right.
it. We think we have all the time in the world, but wow, these days go by really quick. And before you know it, it's like Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year, do it all over again.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so just making sure that, you're not procrastinating the very thing that God is asking you to do because you're stuck in your mind, just doubting yourself, or, like overwhelmed with fear, like, no, like God, if he's calling you to it, he's already equipped you for it. And so we just have to be crazy enough to believe that he's going to do what he said he's going to do. And so even if you have received prophetic words of, what God has in store for you, or if he has spoke to you in that one-on-one time, like, for sure, like, write it down, record those prayers that people are coming along praying for you, because the enemy would love to come and just snatch that right up from you as soon as you receive it. And to be able to hear it, played over and over again in your mind, that sometimes that's what we need. And so it's the urgency, sometimes
Yeah.
it's there, when it comes to what God is asking you to step into. But when it comes to the to-do list, he knows what's urgent and he knows what can wait till
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I love that. Hey, friend, I wanted to take a quick pause to ask if you've taken the quiz yet to find out what type of dreamer are you. It's super important to discover what's working for you, but also some things that may be keeping you from really pursuing your greatest purpose. It takes just 2 minutes to find out if you're the skimboarder, the sunbather, the sandcastle builder, or the surfer babe. So jump over to dreamerquiz.com and be sure to share your results and tag me in it. Now back to the show. And you talked a little bit about your family and your desire to steward that gift well,
yes.
and that responsibility. And obviously you're crushing the game, and living that mom life as well, but in tandem with chasing a dream and chasing a vision that God has given you. And so, I know there's a lot of moms that are listening to this episode as well too. And so, I love what you do with your daughter on social media. It's amazing. I did not
Yeah.
realize she was only 10. She carries
Yes.
herself so well. Your dynamic together is just amazing. And so I love the mother-daughter dynamic. And so maybe share with, why that's important to you to bring her in, bring your boys in as well. And what you hope that they're getting from watching you. Just such an up close and
Yeah.
personal view,
Yes, they get the good, bad, and indifferent. That's
Yes.
for sure. There's no sugarcoating in the Enge family.
Yeah.
And so we try to, be as authentic as we, possibly can. But all of that to say, my daughter and I, yes, she's 10 going on 24. And a lot of times, as moms, when we think about incorporating our kids into our daily lives, we're like, okay, we're out here adulting and they're just kids, and that phrase, they're just kids, can sometimes limit them to what God is ready for them to even step into. And so my daughter, in my head as a 10-year-old, I'm like, she should still be playing with Barbies and dolls and like all of those
Yeah.
girly things. And she's just like, she's already outgrown those things. And so she really has like become this magnet to me, which I'm beyond grateful for. And I know, that might just be a phase. I hope it's not. But all of that to say, she's really wanted to come alongside me. And so in me doing different events, I've had her come alongside me and work some of the events with me and just observe and learn and see, the high stress and the, level of
Right.
professionalism that you need to still operate in. And but even down to just like preparing for an event,
Right.
and there's so many things that she as a 10-year-old can do that takes the load even off of me. And as adults, we sometimes think like, oh, they're not going to do it to the level that we want them to do it. And it's honestly just us letting go of this, like, has to be perfect. And yes, we strive for perfection, but not to the point where we're like, limiting our children and what they're even called to. And so in me allowing her to kind of be a part of my world and come into my world, she has really just started to thrive in the world of hospitality, where I even see that when certain holidays come up, she's in her head thinking like, can we put these little goodies
Oh,
together for friends and for this one and my teacher and all of that. And it's really like a beautiful thing because it's being taught to her. But I really
right.
believe that the Lord has already placed those gifts within her and that she's having the opportunity to activate those things
Yeah.
at a younger age because I'm modeling the very thing, in right before her eyes. And so again, even if, we think all the time we start a business and we want the kids to just like take it over and give it away to them and grow into it. And even if that isn't necessarily the outcome that God has for her in her life, I believe that the skill sets that she is being exposed to are going to complement whatever it is that God has in store for her.
Yeah.
Because I know as far as my boys go, you normally think of like hospitality, that's a girl thing, events, it's a girl thing. But there's so much that goes on behind the scenes of an event where I always say, like, the beauty can only go as far as the muscles can go, right?
Yeah. I love
So
that. Yeah.
my 14-year-old son is like in his prime, going to the gym and getting all these, gains or whatever
Yeah.
they call them. And so I tell him all the time, I said, I don't really care how big your muscles are getting. If you're not using them to help, Meg Enge and go
Yeah.
and serve your mama well, then like, I don't care
It's
about how big
useless.
your
Yeah.
biceps are. I need you to move that photo wall to the truck.
I love that.
And so, like I said, is he going to be a logistics manager when he grows up? Maybe he will, maybe he won't. I'm sure the Lord has an amazing plan over his life. But the very thing that I want, my kids to learn, and even the youngest little Maxwell, 6 years old, he's got this gift of just like wanting to production line everything. And so putting little favors together and, little details, it's like if
Hmm.
you have the patience to teach them, they're a sponge. They're ready to learn. And so I think a lot of times it's just us as adults just kind of like, for one, believing that they're not just kids, that limits them to being able to do adult things. And, as long as they can do something, whether it's your kids or somebody that you bring on, an intern or a volunteer or, a
Hmm.
part-time person, as long as they can do it at 80%, then that's like a total win because your time is so valuable. And if I'm stuck, doing things that honestly my 6-year-old can do, to
Hmm.
be honest, then, I'm taking away from the other tasks that truly only I can do in this timing. And so a lot of it is just letting go. But when you allow your kids to see what you're working on, and then they get to see the reactions of the clients when
Yeah.
it's all put together, they feel like, oh, I was a part of that. I
Hmm.
helped do that. I put all those chocolates in that bag and tied that cute bow that, the bow era is fully in effect right now.
Yes.
And so they feel like they were included. They get
Hmm.
the reward. They get, to feel like, okay, like this isn't just something that mom is doing. Like we are all really doing it together. And so when it comes to my children, especially my daughter,
Hmm.
I see it so heavy on her, that I want her to learn from me, even with, even all my kids. When God calls you to do something and it's outside of your comfort zone, if He's calling you to do it, I want all of my kids to be able to have enough faith to take that huge mountain leap and just go after it with all that they have, and not to look back and not to be worried, but to just go after it. I want them to be like, my mom, she was, a woman of God that God told her to jump and she just leaped as far as she could, leap. And so I want to instill that in them because, again, there'll be some times where mom's not there, but I hope that they remember, these times and they say, okay, if God could do it for my mom, He can do it for me, and even with all the other listeners, like if God can do it with Meg and Meg Enge and Co., surely He can do it with me. I'd like to sit here and say, like, I know all the answers and I can see all the stairs on the spiral staircase, but I'm telling you, it's like a shot in the dark.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and just the wanting them to just go after it, just be, just have that tenacity and just can't stop kind of, personality that they're going to go after it. They're not going to allow the obstacles and the challenges that arise to get in their way. Like
Hmm.
they're going to be persistent and they're going to pursue it with all that they have. And so that's truly my heart's desire, whether they, continue on with Meg Enge and Co. or fully a part of it or
Hmm.
just sprinkled in, then those takeaways are what I really desire for, my kids to, hold on to and
Yeah.
be able to apply in their own lives and whatever the journey is that God has them on individually.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I mean, obviously, we're raising our kids very similarly, and Gavin had recently asked me, Mom, are you raising us to be entrepreneurs? And I was like, well, we're raising you to use your gifts and your talents to do whatever God calls you to do. And so, like you
Yeah.
were saying, it's not the technical skills that we're teaching them of tying the perfect bow or building the perfect golf cart, in our situation, or, whatever the skill or the widget is of the business,
Yes.
it's the tenacity and it's the faith and it's the boldness and it's the willingness to find a solution and overcome the obstacles. And
Yeah.
I love asking parents, like those moments where you see that light bulb go off and you're like, oh my gosh, they are getting it, because they, like you said, they see the good, the bad, and the ugly, but like, are
Yes.
they like really getting the good,
Mhm.
and is that going to supersede, the hard parts, and
Yes.
whether they work, corporate, or they go into ministry, or they do whatever, it's like, we all know God has a great plan for our kids. We have no idea
Yeah.
what that's going to look like. And honestly, the way like technology is going, I am like fully convinced that we are not even aware of what our kids are going to be
No,
doing because it hasn't even been created or invented yet.
exactly.
And so we literally cannot prepare them for the technical side of what they will physically do, but their mindset and their faith and their
Yeah.
belief in God showing up big for them is just like, oh, that just makes me
Yeah.
so fired up. It's like my biggest passion.
I agree
Yeah.
100% with you. Only God knows. And so we just get to, raise them to the best of our ability and,
Hmm.
build up the things that God has already placed within them and, do the best we can, because they sure don't come with instructions
Instructions.
or manuals on how to
Yeah.
raise them, and they're all different. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'd love for you to kind of get into kind of the why behind your branding for Meg Enge and Co. And so,
yeah.
yes, it's event planning. It's like an excuse. I like to say it's like an excuse to make any occasion a special occasion. Like, oh,
Yes.
that would be fun. Let's make that a big deal. And there's genuine like big occasions, but you're so good at bringing all the specialness to like just such an elevated level. And so talk about why that's important to you. You're not just like, barreling out these events and moving on to the next one. I mean, you're so intentional and detailed and specific. And like you mentioned, you want people to feel seen. You want them to know
Mm.
that they were thought of. And so, yeah, just kind of get into all of like the why behind the brand and why that's important. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So with Meg Enge and Co., it's redefining elegance and elevating experiences. And the reason that that is like, what encompasses Meg Enge and Co. is because, anyone can put together an event. I mean, it's not rocket science, but, there's a difference between being intentional and really behind Meg Enge and Co. We want to curate experiences that are unforgettable, not only for the people that are hosting the event, but the individuals and the guests that are in attendance, truly. And so that part can be overlooked so easily, to be completely honest. I mean, whether it's a corporate event, a gender reveal, those are so big right now, and I cry at every single one of
Oh,
those. You just see the big puff of blue smoke or pink. Oh my
oh,
goodness, it's hard
yes.
to not just shower yourself in tears. But whether it's one of those or a wedding, every single one of those milestone occasions, you can utilize all of your time and effort into, okay, like, what's the color, what's the theme, what's the centerpiece gonna look like, and all the while, we're forgetting about the guest experience. Like, how amazing would it be to be able to host an event where not only the host is being celebrated, of course, that's the reason for the event, right? But how amazing would it be for not only the host to be celebrated, but for your guests to just receive that overflow and abundance of love and celebration, and that they even too feel so included, that they didn't just come and bring a gift and say congratulations, but they really were able to experience the love that just overflows from that person's life. And so a lot of my work when I, worked at the church, was the feedback that I got, was just like, Meg, everything is just so well thought out. And like the things that I wouldn't even think about having available for people, like, you've thought that through. And
Mhm.
so again, when you host an event, it's like, how amazing is it that you can have your guests walk away from that event and be like, I've never experienced anything like that. Of course, everything, externally was beautiful and aesthetically pleasing, but there was so much personalized detail in every area of the event. I just felt like they thought of me and
Mhm.
my experience and me walking away from that, to the point where they're talking about that event for like weeks and months and even maybe years to come, planning weddings and stuff. People are like, that was the wedding of the century. Like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like they thought about everything. It was cold outside, and instead of the favors being bubbles, we got blankets because they thought about us.
Mhm.
And so when you put that kind of intention behind your planning of whether it's, a corporate workshop or a networking event, I mean, from this, viewpoint, look like I'm very, extroverted. But to be honest, it really depends on the room you place me in.
Yeah.
And if I'm walking into a room without my husband as my plus one or my bestie that's gonna hype me up in the car ride to
Yeah.
whatever networking event I'm going to, I can like quite literally turn into such a hermit crab. And so you gotta really knock to get me to come out of my shell. But
Mhm.
some of those guest experiences that you can include into your whatever it is that you're hosting, that can be, something that keeps your guests there longer, that really wants to come alongside you and support you, that's going to advertise organically for you because
Right.
they're just like, oh, I can't stop talking about it. I know I've told you, already, but man, like that branding, event that I went to, like they just thought of everything, whether it was the mouthwash in the bathroom after dinner time so that I can actually continue mingling and having
Mhm.
a good time without having to worry if I have a mint or a piece of gum in my, pocket,
Yeah.
And so those little details, and when you do that, you really set the atmosphere and the environment to welcome the Holy Spirit into and really just love on people in such a powerful way. And sometimes people leave, events that are, that hosts partner with me and bring me on as their planner. They leave those events, and the feedback that I receive from my clients are like, I don't know what that was, but that
Mm.
was amazing. And like, that just felt different. And,
Wow.
there's some people that just, they don't have a relationship with the Lord in the way that others do. They may not be there yet,
Yeah.
but you can sense the Holy Spirit whether
Mhm.
you're a Christian or not. And sometimes people don't know how to wrap their mind around that, but when you really honor people and you really take time to personalize things, and it's not just like throwing stuff together and putting your vision board to life, and you think about those details and personalizations, you really give God the opportunity to really just flood your event and have his way. And so I can't even take all the credit, to be completely honest. The Holy Spirit works in such a beautiful way in and through the gifts that he's placed within me to, to think of those creative ways on how to make that event, the best of the best and elevated in every way, every angle. And so when you partner with the Lord in doing events and you think about others and not just yourself, and you're justified, to be completely honest, to think about yourself on your wedding day.
Yeah.
Just a side note there,
But hire
but
somebody that will help you think of your guests. Yes.
yes, and I'll worry about thinking about you too, all those brides out
Yes.
there. But it can be really overwhelming. And so sometimes it's just easy for the, for a host to just get those, top 5 things, and the other
Mhm.
things go, by the wayside. But really my brand is to incorporate the ministry, aspect into all that I'm doing and to be led by the Holy Spirit in everything I do so that I can be prepared for even the fires that are going to pop off that day, and to remain, professional, and to have great character that represents Jesus well, and that, everybody is not feeling the chaos,
Mhm.
because we can plan, we can pre-plan, we can, put all the measures in place, but we all know that things happen and it's all in how you respond to it. And
Mhm.
so the Lord has given me this patience and this really compassion for people to just love on them in such a beautiful way that helps event day go smooth. And ultimately, the Lord knows that his will is, going to come to pass, and
Mhm.
we just have to trust even when the hiccups come. And so
Yeah.
I've been so honored and so blessed to be able to walk this, entrepreneurial journey out with, the Lord, and
Yes.
that he's and trusted me. And, you know, when I took the big, huge leap of faith, to be honest, I said in my own head what I was going to do and what I was not going to do. Not because I didn't want to do those things, but because I already started to discredit what I thought I was capable of in this season. And I told myself, and then I started to tell everybody, hey, I'm not going to do weddings. It doesn't mean I'm never going to do them. I just don't think that that's what I'm supposed to be doing in this season. Well, let's just say, you know, the very thing that you sometimes think you should not be doing is exactly what you should be doing. And so the Lord got really creative because he had sent a few others down my path to say, hey, I'm getting married. Can you do my wedding? And I gave him a solid no. And I said, I'll do your bridal shower. I'll do your rehearsal dinner, whatever it is. And they were just like undone. Like, what do you mean? And then he sent this one that he knew was not going to take no for an answer. He knew that she was going to be persistent and that she was honestly going to be my cheerleader. And it's crazy to think that this client was my cheerleader to get me to step into what honestly she needed me to do for her and her future husband in this season. And so he sent this amazing woman of God that was getting married. She just got proposed to. And she said, I hope you're ready. She didn't even ask me. I hope you're ready to plan my wedding.
That's amazing. You're like, what's happening?
Ready or not, here we come.
Yeah. And it turned out beautiful.
It turned out, I mean, it was held at the most prestigious place in Orlando, Florida, and everything was just like a fairy tale in a box, you know, and it was a pinch me moment, if I'm being completely honest. I was undone. And thankfully, my husband and my assistant that were with me, serving with me at the time, they said, Meg, we know you're a workhorse, but we need you to stop and just look at, it was outdoors and the reception was, you know, finally all set. It was flipped in an hour, from the ceremony to the reception and the lawn, that they hosted the reception on. They said, you need to just stop and take this in because this is unbelievable. And so I'm so grateful that I had people in my life to get me to stop and realize, like, wow, look at what God has done to you saying yes in obedience to not only doing events, but doing the events that you said you weren't gonna do. And you know, the vendors that I partnered with were so amazing. They couldn't even, some of them I shared, you know, that we grew really close. I said, this is fun fact. This is my first wedding.
Yeah.
And they were just like, jaws hit the floor. They couldn't believe it. They were already saying, like, we've never worked with a planner that has been so on top of the communication, so like available and willing to do whatever, you know. And I was like, these were all things that I needed to hear because it's not every day that I get to work with other planners and see what they do. And so to receive that live feedback from vendors, you know, like DJ and florist and different ones in the industry, was like God planting them in my path so that I could hear from them as the experts. Because to be honest, I spoke with another wedding network, a lady who runs a wedding network, and she said, Meg, God is up to something, because there are planners that have been trying to get a wedding in their portfolio from this venue for 15 to 20 years. And this is your first one. She said, only God. And I was just like, okay, you know what?
Yeah.
I just give it all to you, Lord, because truly only he could do those things. And so that was a huge eye opener, you know, that again, if he's called you to it, he's already equipped you to do those things. And he really he blew my mind.
Yeah, he's gonna show
Let
up.
alone all the guests,
Yeah.
and the bride. And,
Yeah.
it's
So
in those
good.
moments that you're just like, okay, his plans are better than mine.
I love that. Oh man. Okay. So, I mean, we could just be going and going and going. There's so much goodness
Truly.
here. It's so good. It's so rich. But for time's sake, I want you
Yes.
to, in a way that Meg Enge and Co would do it, put it in a big red satin bow.
Yes. Style
Um,
and sophistication.
yes, wrap up this whole message of, we started this whole episode with, we're going to talk about the great things God has done to our so-called perfect plans. But there's also a huge portion of listeners, myself included, who are like, I'm right in the middle of something and I don't know what to do. I'm like you were, Meg, where I'm on one side of the big, expanse. And I know deep down I'm supposed to leap, but I'm stuck and I don't know how to take the next step. I don't know what it's going to look like. And I just need one more just shove or breath of fresh air or grab my hand and jump with me. What would you say to those listeners who are like, I know it's time, but yet I'm at that last big leap. What do I do? What would you tell them? Yeah.
Yes. I would tell them to jump and don't look back. And so honestly, with myself, there's obstacles, there's challenges. I would love to sit here and say to you that like this whole journey, I'm in 7 months of taking my journey. I would love to sit here and say that it's all like a walk in the park and daffodils and flowers and, all
Right.
these great things. There's real life obstacles, there's real life challenges. There's going to be those things where you're like, oh my goodness, like what did I actually step into or
Right.
jump into? But even with all of those little, speed bumps in the road, I like to call them, or backhand compliments, that I receive, that, you just got to keep pressing through and not allow those things to be a roadblock in your life, that I do not look back with any regret that I shouldn't have taken the leap. I fully know that I am in the will of God. And for me, that's enough, and whether you're at a 9 to 5 corporate job or you're doing ministry, or, a lot of times within your journey of motherhood, we take a little pause to pour into the littles. And then now they're getting to a place where we're ready to jumpstart all of those dreams that kind of been swiped under the rug and, buried.
Mhm.
And it's that time to step into what God has been, putting on your heart and nudging you to do. And so I would just really say to all of the listeners that feel like they're in that teeter-totter, transition, to fully just trust in the Lord and be crazy enough to believe that what he said he's going to do, he's actually going to do, but he needs you to take the first step before he can do his part. And so he's waiting on you. He's putting those, little unctions within your heart to make that shift for a reason, because he's at a standstill until you, go forward and make that faith declaration step that, okay, Lord, not my will, but your will. And so if I can just say, there is no regret. Do I miss the people that I got to like work with every single day and come alongside and collab with? 100%. I miss each and every one of them. But I don't look back and be like, oh, I should have stayed where I was, and has there, like I said, been times where it's like, oh, this is looking a little rocky, but guess what? I know what I heard from the Lord, and he was very clear. And I just keep reminding myself daily on what he's called me to do. And if anything, I would find somebody that's going to be in your corner, that's going to continue to propel you forward in the things that that God has called you to do, because it's very easy to kind of like get in this rut because you jumped and you leap, but now you don't know what to do, and then you just get busy doing the things that are like right here in your face. And one of the challenges on honestly in this season for me has been like, having those boundaries of like, okay, I'm home and, there's things that obviously need to be done around the house,
Yeah.
but I also know that there's things for my business that need to be done as well. Which one am I going to do? And it's like,
Mhm.
we love to check the things off the box. And so a lot of times we can quick do the dishes and check it off the
Yeah.
box. And so making sure that you have that accountability partner that's going to cheer you on, that's going to, remind you of your action item list, that's going to bring it to the forefront before all these other distractions kind of easily sneak into your day and then your day is gone. And so if you can find somebody like that while you're in the process of taking the leap and really share your heart with them on where you want to go, what you want to do, and put those, that timeline together so that they can help you to stay on course and not get distracted by the things of life, then that would be a huge benefit to
Yeah.
you in the season of transition.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah. You always need your people. You always need
Yeah.
your people. And I love that too, because I'm like, and that's one of the biggest purposes behind this podcast, so
Yes.
whether we can meet in person, you can message, me or any of the guests, of course. And
Yes.
we're here to cheer you on. So whether we can meet in person or virtually, we're here to be that accountability too. Like, hey, you said you're going to do this. Hey, you said this was a big dream of yours. Where are you at with it? Like I will call you to that and remind you the things that are deep down that you
Yes,
need to do.
100%.
So we're
That's
here for
really
you. We're cheering you on, because this is not meant to be done alone. And it's such a
No.
great community of, mom, female entrepreneurs, and I don't mean to even just limit it to, women entrepreneurs, but
We love men
we love the men
too.
too. They're amazing. We all need each other.
Yes, yes.
But yes, there's just something so powerful about unity and community and just bringing out the best in each other. Speaking of unity, if you are watching us on YouTube right now, you may have noticed that we're both wearing black puffy sleeve shirts, totally unplanned. And I just think such like a little God wink of like, my daughters are unified. They have a
Yes.
message from me to share. And I'm like, it's the little things that make me so happy.
Yes.
So,
I love style. We are on
yes,
par.
yes. And if you're just listening to us today on the other
Yeah.
platforms, then hey, check us out on YouTube and you can see what we're
Yes.
wearing. All right, Meg. Well, this has been absolutely amazing. This is going to be one of
Thank
those
you.
episodes that I just re-listened to and rewinded, just play back, play back, play back.
Come on. I love it.
And I know everybody has gotten so much out of it and they're going to want to keep following you and finding more about you. And you are in the Orlando, Florida area, but you also can help plan events all over the country. So
Yes.
if
Yes.
what she was speaking on just really, inspired you to be like, you know what, I've got events coming up, or you know what, I'm looking to create community and let people feel loved and known. And an event would help do that. And I think Meg could help pull it together and bring my vision to life or help me with a vision of it.
Yes.
Please reach out to her because
Come on down.
she's the real deal. So tell us all the
Thank you.
ways we can find you and follow you.
Yeah, so I try to keep all things very simple, including how you can follow me. So whether it's on Facebook or Instagram, it's Meg, MEG, and then just my last name, Enge, ENGE, and Co. So spell out Meg Enge and Co. is how you can find me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, as well as if you want to watch my personal journey and the fun things I do with my daughter.
Yes.
If you need a good laugh in there as well, then it's just simply Meg Enge without the and Co. And then my website, if you want to check out some of the different events that I do or connect with me there, it's megengeandco.com. So that's how you can connect with me, and I can't wait to hear from you as well.
Yes, awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, this has been absolutely amazing. And like I said, thank you again for sharing with everybody today and just bringing that honesty seeing that story and just reminding us all that God is up to something whether we can see it yet or not. And yes, so good.
Great. It's my pleasure. Thank you again for having me. I count it a joy, and I hope that this has blessed everybody that's listening, and these other episodes coming after me. You better just stay tuned because it's going to keep getting better and better.
Aw, that's amazing. Well, thank you all for joining us today. And as always, keep your big ideas coming. We can't wait to talk to you soon. Bye. Hey, friends. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Before you go, it would mean the world to me and my family if you would share this episode with at least one person who you think might benefit from this message. And of course, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. You can also follow me at Ashlee Ilg on Instagram to keep up with our adventures and for continued encouragement as you pursue your big ideas. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time.